While pop culture is littered with supernatural monsters and strange creatures, vampires seem to be one of the most fascinating of them all, with innumerable movies, books, and comics surrounding their existence. Movies such as Twilight or Nosferatu have garnered a whole lot of fans, but very few fans know of the existence of the Master Vampire, who was also known as the world's first vampire, cursed with the burden of being trapped in the Broken Tooth Mountain for the longest time. Master Vampire eventually broke free and stirred up a whole lot of trouble in the 2014 horror film Dracula Untold. Today, we will dive into his story arc, right from his transformation to his eventual rise as a tyrant, and tell you everything about him. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is the Master Vampire? What is his origin? Portrayed by Charles Dance, Master Vampire's origins can be traced to some 2,000 years ago, when he ruled an entire Roman Empire, also known as Emperor Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, or Caligula. He was obsessed with attaining a higher power. Caligula's greed for power took him all the way to the Broken Tooth Mountain in Transylvania, where he summoned a demon to strike a deal with him. He hoped to gain access to the demon's dark powers, and his excitement got the better of him as he sealed the deal without giving much thought to the consequences. In a matter of seconds, Caligula transformed into a humanoid creature with blood-red eyes and pointed teeth, and gained a new identity as Master Vampire. Moreover, the demon punished him for his greed by trapping him in the darkness of the Broken Tooth Mountain for eternity, and declared that the only way out for him is by sharing his curse with others. For the longest time, Master Vampire contemplated his future before succumbing to his fate as a vampire lord and bringing about pain upon his victims as he sunk his teeth into their necks and subjected them to a cursed existence forever. What role did the Master Vampire play in Dracula Untold? As the movie starts, Master Vampire stumbled upon Vlad's army while they were looking for an Ottoman scouting party. Even though he managed to attack most of his soldiers, Vlad acted on instinct and used a silver sword to incapacitate him until he could make a swift escape. Just like most vampires in folklore, Master Vampire had a weakness for silver, but he managed to bounce back from the incident, while Vlad found himself in a crisis. When the Turkish Empire's Sultan Mehmed II reached out to Vlad to enlist 1,000 young boys into his army, he realized that his son would also be caught up in this. In an attempt to save his family, he returned to the mountains to find Master Vampire, who offered to save his family and land. However, Vlad would have to feed on the vampire's blood in return, and Master Vampire even warned him that he would feel an insatiable thirst for human blood in the following days. While Vlad was looking forward to gaining supernatural powers, Master Vampire told him that he must resist the urge to feed on humans for the next few days if he ever wanted to revert back to his human form. In case he succumbed to these urges, Vlad would transform into a vampire for all eternity, while Master Vampire would break free from his curse of confinement within the mountains. While Master Vampire hoped that Vlad would set him free for his curse and eventually help him get revenge on the demon that had cursed him in the past. But Vlad insisted that he wouldn't give in. As time passed, Vlad managed to hold up his side of the bargain for more than 2 days, when his wife ended up getting fatally wounded in her attempt to defend their son's life. While taking her last breaths, Vlad's wife insisted that he should feed on her blood to complete the transformation process into a vampire to ensure their son's safety. Meanwhile, Master Vampire bides his time in the mountains and continues to hope that Vlad will go through this plan. As he reluctantly agreed to drink his wife's blood, Master Vampire's curse was lifted, and he could finally venture out into the world to track down the demon who had trapped him. How did the Master Vampire manipulate Vlad into becoming a vampire? In the meantime, Vlad made his way back to Gaius's cave, much to his surprise. Moreover, Gaius's supernatural powers enabled him to sense Vlad's feelings of hope, which, unlike every other human who ventured this close to him, typically emanated fear. When Gaius ordered him to get rid of his silver weapons, Vlad obliged, and even confided that he was utterly helpless in his war against the Turks. With the threat of his entire kingdom's destruction looming over his head, Vlad believed that his superhuman powers were the only thing that could ensure his family's safety. While Gaius was impressed with Vlad's dedication towards his family, Vlad told him that his origins as Dracula essentially meant Sons of the Dragon, or Protector of the Innocents. In this way, Vlad believed that he had done the right thing by undergoing the transformation process, while Gaius forced him to stop lying and be truthful. He sensed that Vlad was not as pure as he was painting himself to be, and Vlad then admitted that he had actually killed thousands of people. He further confessed that he felt no guilt over his actions, and that he spilt so much blood because humans did not fear the sword as much as they feared monsters. Gaius then proceeded to scratch Vlad's neck and lick off his blood to get a better understanding of his thoughts before telling him all about his centuries-long confinement within the caves. He then admitted that he had waited for an eternity for a man to enter the cave and deemed Vlad worthy enough to be his salvation. Vlad then addressed Gaius as his salvation, and the latter then bit into his own arm and offered his blood to Vlad. Gaius further told him that his blood would help him gain the strength of 100 men, as well as a regenerative healing factor and superhuman speed and senses. When Vlad inquired about the price he would have to pay for such access to his powers, he learned that this would help Gaius free himself from captivity at the cost of entrapping Vlad. Vlad then realized that he would essentially wander the earth like a scourge and eventually end up destroying everything that means to him as a vampire. However, he declared that he would claim his own life before destroying his family or his empire. And Gaius then admitted that he also stayed within the cave instead of wreaking havoc all over the place for the past few centuries. Eventually, Gaius concluded that the only way to survive an eternity as a vampire would be by playing an ultimate game of hope versus despair, while Vlad underwent this transformation. What happened when Vlad completed his transformation? While Gaius disappeared for a while, he finally reappeared when Vlad was inching close to the end of his transformation as a vampire. When he was finally done, Gaius realized that he had managed to break free from his curse, and that he could now regain his humanity after centuries. What is the master vampire doing in the present day? Gaius decided to use his freedom to travel the world, and he was in a local bar in London when he spotted Vlad making conversation with Mina Murray, a reincarnation of his dead wife. He then decided that it was time for him to confront Vlad and ask for his help in getting revenge against the demon that had cursed him several centuries ago. What kind of personality does the master vampire have? Typically, master vampire came across as a manipulative and self-centered individual who always looked out for ways to free himself of his curse. He was quite cunning, and he managed to brainwash Vlad into drinking his blood and turning into a vampire. He also had a history of killing anyone who dared to explore his cave, and he was quite a malevolent being who had claimed innumerable lives over the centuries. However, he had impressive self-control and managed to show great restraint in his approach with Vlad. To ensure that he does not scare him away, Master Vampire slowly gained Vlad's trust and convinced him to transform into a vampire before establishing that he needed his help in getting revenge. What are the Master Vampire's powers and abilities? Master Vampire had all the characteristic features of a vampire, ranging from superhuman strength and mobility to enhanced senses. It was said that he had the strength of about 100 men and that he moved at the speed of a falling star. Moreover, he had insanely quick reflexes despite being over a few centuries old, and his regenerative healing factor helped him heal from any wound in a matter of seconds. Master Vampire was also said to be immortal, and he could technically live forever as long as he was not mortally wounded. He even had superhuman senses that allowed him to navigate in the dark, pick up on faraway sounds, and differentiate between the sense of humans and supernatural beings. He could also tweak his appearance and shapeshift to assume a regular appearance or change certain body parts, such as turning his nails into razor-sharp claws or unhinging his jaw like a snake. While it was not depicted in the movie, he could also turn into a swarm of bats to evade any incoming attacks or travel from one place to another. He could also manipulate weather and summon dark, stormy clouds to dodge sunlight if he had to step out during the day. Besides all this, Master Vampire was excellent at hand-to-hand combat, and he even managed to defeat Vlad, even though he had barely had any training or practice in centuries. To top it all off, Master Vampire was incredibly charismatic and intelligent, making him a master manipulator who knew exactly how to convince his victims to give into his schemes. What weakness does the Master Vampire have? Just like any typical vampire, Master Vampire was vulnerable to silver and would lose his vision and feel distorted when he was near the metal. He could barely tolerate being close to it, but he was stronger than others of his kind, who would start burning when they came in contact with silver. Instead, Gaius just felt weak in its presence and could not demonstrate his strength and speed when he was struck by a silver sword. He also started disintegrating after prolonged exposure to sunlight, but he could heal from these instances after feeding on some blood. Gaius could also be killed if someone stabbed him in the heart with sharp wood, and he would immediately disintegrate and decompose into a corpse. While these were his major weaknesses, one could also keep him at bay by using a crucifix. But this was not common knowledge back in the day, and it is plausible that a crucifix did not affect them the same way as modern-day vampires. How strong is the master vampire compared to other vampires? Introduced as a progenitor of all vampires, Master Vampire's origins can be traced to the original Dracula novel and can be easily classified as an alpha vampire, and he maintains a superior status as compared to other modern-day vampires, who were often inspired by the traits and appearances of alpha vampires, such as the Master Vampire. Marvelous verdict. With that, we have explored Master Vampire's insane story arc, from his initial deal with the demon to his imprisonment and eventual transformation into a human. While his greed for power had caused him a great deal of trouble, he eventually managed to break free from the world of the supernatural, but not before stirring up a whole lot of chaos of his own. There is no doubt that he has established himself as one of the most iconic vampires in the history of pop culture, and we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.